Welcome to Thundering Legion, a podcast by and for Armed Forces members covering apologetics, interviews, and news and events from a Christian perspective. Our mission is to advance the gospel to Armed Forces members of all nations and build Christian community for the purpose of mutual encouragement and accountability. Now for today's show. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for today's interview episode. We're digging into the story of Stu Grazier and his business partner, David Gutierrez. They're retired naval officers who are passionate about helping men to become the best husbands, dads, friends, and leaders they can be. They partner on Storehouse 310 Ventures, the Storehouse Mastermind, and the Kinetic Men Mastermind. Stu, welcome to the show. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you ended up joining the military?
Yeah, thanks, man. Trevor, this is awesome. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. And you know, it's much needed. So you're doing great stuff, man.
Thank you.
Honored to be on the show. And so a little bit about background about me. I was born and raised in Texas, and I had a really good friend of mine from lower elementary. His older brother went to the Naval Academy, and he invited me to go watch Navy play SMU in football when I was in middle school. And there was like a big flyover, F-18s flying over. Actually, it was probably F-14s at the time, and they had a big march on. And so like I just was immediately hooked. And then, remember that movie Top Gun, the original Top Gun? Yeah.
I heard of that.
That got me. That got me good. So I was all fired up, wanted to be a jet pilot. And so I was really focused from pretty early on that I wanted to go into the Navy and go to the Naval Academy, which I was blessed. I got into the Naval Academy. I did all 4 years there. I played baseball there for a while, and then went and got a pilot slot. And I went into flight school thinking I wanted to be a jet pilot, and I ended up coming out being a helicopter pilot, but all by choice. Honestly, I just really liked kind of the low and slow and flying around the trees, and so I chose to be a helicopter pilot instead. Fast forward, I did 20 years of service, and now just recently retired last June. So yeah, that's awesome. Short story.
Well, thanks for your service, 20 years to our country. We really appreciate that. Will you mind sharing with us a little bit about your testimony, how that wrapped into your getting into the military and then your military service?
Yeah, man. So, growing up, kind of small town Texas, everyone claimed to be a Christian, but a lot of people would go to church on Sundays and then be, cussing and drinking and doing all the kind of the sinful nature on Monday. And I saw a lot of that. And, early on, kind of in high school, I was honestly just a little put off by it. So, I kind of similar, like I'd claim I'm a Christian, but I didn't really walk and follow what God puts out, right? I wasn't reading the word, and I didn't really have a relationship with him at all. I went to college. My now business partner, but college roommate at the time, David Gutierrez, which he was supposed to be on today but couldn't make it, unfortunately. He was actually pretty focused on his faith. He was actually a Catholic at the time. He started inviting me to go to church with him. I continued to say no. I think I went like once or twice, and I wasn't really excited about going to Catholic mass with him. But my sister, who was 2 years younger than me, she went off to college, and she found her faith through just connecting with some local people at her college. She went to Oklahoma University, and she kind of started talking to me about it, just kind of telling me what she was doing, and I started kind of just looking into it a little bit more. And I went off on a deployment to Iraq. I was actually embedded with an Army civil affairs battalion, and there was an Army chaplain on the base that we were at. We were in Basra, Iraq, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And he started inviting me to go to coffee with him, and then he invited me to join a small group with him, and we started reading this book, Wild at Heart, by John Etheridge, and I just opened up to the idea. I started going to church with him on base at the Army base, and we just started having kind of weekly conversations. And I needed something because we were getting rocket attacks and mortar attacks pretty much like weekly. So I that was really where I found my faith. And Chaplain Mike Lotzer, if he listens to this, like, he is the man who brought me to faith. And so I came back from that deployment and really took it serious and started going to church, started reading the Bible, and started walking the walk. And ever since then, I've just been growing in my faith. David also, turned kind of to a Christian from the Catholic faith, and we walk daily. We pray together daily in our businesses. We talk about our struggles, and everything that we do now in our business has that faith aspect first and foremost in our life. You mentioned our businesses, Storehouse, everything. We have Storehouse 310 Ventures, Storehouse Capital, Storehouse Properties, Storehouse Mastermind, all with this idea that we give first. We give the first fruits, the a tenth of our profits, and that comes from Malachi 3:10, where we bring a tithe to the storehouse. So, so that's kind of the short story again.
So, what point in your career were you at when you went on this deployment? And I take it that's kind of the beginning of your dedicated walk with Christ. And
Yeah.
What did that look like going forward? How did that transform your path?
Let's see, that would have been 2008. So I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2002. I went to flight school, got my wings in 2004, went to my first squadron, flying helicopters, did a full deployment schedule season through that. And then as I was leaving my first squadron, that's when I got that big deployment to Iraq with the Army Civil Affairs Battalion. And so it was 2008, 2009. So not quite halfway through my military career. So I was still kind of a young lieutenant at the time. So that's 03 for the Navy. And that's kind of where I started walking. It was interesting. I when I went on that deployment, I had, you bring like your DVD collections and stuff like that. And, part of that DVD collection was pornography. And there was just that one day, like, where I was like, just God spoke to me. He was like, get rid of it all. And so, like, I took it and just, like, basically cracked every single DVD I had, took the downloads and, like, threw them all in the trash and just, like, got rid of it all. And it was almost just like a kind of a start over. And at the time, I was newly married. I'd met my wife when I was in San Diego. And so, like, I had that deployment pretty quickly right after we were married. So it was a challenging time for sure. But yeah, that's kind of where it got started.
Yeah, it's amazing how God uses those challenging times to really refine us and guide our venture forward. So, how have you seen God working through some of your successes and your failures throughout your military career?
Yeah, man, for sure. I think now where I'm at is you kind of look back and see where the challenges were, where the struggles were. And to your point, I recently just heard this in a sermon just recently at my church. And he just said that, sometimes, like, God will allow you to get to a place where it's so hard and so dark and so deep for you to then be able to realize what's going on and make that change. And, sometimes you're just like, God, like, why am I here? Right. And it's all for a purpose. And so I think that's what, he put me into that situation where, like, I was in Iraq and we were getting mortar attacks and bombs, and, we were ducking and covering, like, all the time. I saw unfortunately people pass, and there were suicides there, and there's all this, like, death and darkness. And that was the place where he was like, all right, here's your time. Right. And I think that happens a lot. There are times where I go back and look at and see, like, when I did something that wasn't, directly, walking in my faith. And it's just kind of redirections, like, all right, dude, like, let's get back on course. Let's get back on path. And so there's just constantly, like, hey, don't trust in yourself, but trust in me. And so you just kind of look at those and go with it.
Yeah, that makes me think of the C.S. Lewis quote. Where he says, quote, "We can ignore even pleasure, but pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse the deaf world." I think that's so true, that we can just, when times are good, we're like, oh yeah, I got this, like, I don't need God. But when we reach those times of difficulty, when it opens our ears to listen. Like, okay, God, what do you got for me?
For sure, man.
So what have been some of your biggest struggles with like authentically living out your faith while also serving in the military after you reach that point of being dedicated to following Christ?
Yeah. So, I think, it's just that, like, I think a lot of times, there's this question of balance of like, you hear the phrase a lot, like let go and let God, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what what do I put my faith in to know that God has a bigger plan and purpose for me versus what do I take action on and put into place, my own doing, right? And so there's just constantly this struggle and this battle internally of what do I just stop and wait for and listen for to hear God's plan, versus what am I taking action on and doing myself. And a prime example is, as I was getting kind of closer to the end of my military journey, I really didn't know what I wanted to do after my 20 years of service. I knew that I didn't really want to go and get just kind of some random W-2 job that I had no purpose and passion in.
Mm-hmm.
Just another like kind of middle manager role at some big corporation. And I just didn't want to do that. Um, I'd been doing real estate for quite a while, just kind of like a side hustle kind of gig, and I could get excited about that. So, I just kind of went all in on the real estate journey and investing and buying properties and flipping and rehabbing and trying all these different things. And you know, to that point, like, do I like just again hustle and grind and go all out and like work my tail off to put all this effort into building wealth and creating money and income
Mm-hmm.
um I got to this point, like, so I did that, right? So I went down this journey and path of like building all this stuff to basically replace my military income because I knew it was coming
Mm-hmm.
soon. But then what I found is I kind of put all the other stuff to the side. What was most important in my life, um, I, there's a period where I wasn't really getting up and doing morning routines and reading the Bible and praying and, you know, slowing down and listening. And there was a time where I wasn't really focused on my family. I wasn't present. I was always on email or my phone or social media. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was just in this place where I was like, I gotta build, I gotta create, I gotta hustle, I gotta grind, I gotta buy, I gotta build these
Yeah.
businesses so I can make all this money and build this wealth for my family. And I said it was for my family, but at the end of the day, it was just a detriment to my family because I wasn't even
Mm-hmm.
present with my family, right? And I wasn't working on myself. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't doing all the stuff that was most important in my life because I was so focused. And, instead of like, hey, maybe I should have just kind of sat back and like put a little bit more attention and focus on what was most important in my life. And I think that's the challenge with men, especially men. And I would say, especially in these transition years or this, the 30 to 40-year-old range where it's the prime earning years of your life, I think men get so focused on their identity and their work and their job that they lose focus on all the other most important things in your life: our God, our family, our health, our having fun and having friends and all those other things
Mm-hmm.
that come into our life.
Something that's
Exactly.
always resonated with me is just the story of David, because David was not a man of inaction. He was a
Mhm.
man of action, and sometimes very flawed action.
Yeah.
But you can read, in Samuel and Kings, you read about his life, and you can flip over to the Psalms and read about his emotional life and his Psalms that he's written. And I just think that's so cool. But you really see this pattern in David where he is in a place, he seeks God's counsel, he seeks other people's counsel, prays, listens, and then he just takes a step of action, confidently. And then sometimes he wildly messes up, like when he sleeps with Bathsheba and then
Yeah.
executes her husband, or leadership decisions while he's a king. But then whenever he makes a mistake, he will just stop, repent, seek God, seek counsel, reassess what's the next best step, and then he takes another step. And I think that model has helped me kind of realize, like, we're not supposed to just stay where we are. We're supposed to be moving in directions, but we're also supposed to be doing that in a way that's God honoring. So my question to you would be, how do we balance faith, trust, listening with planning, goal setting, and action? Because that's just kind of, there's that tension there that you already mentioned.
Yeah. Eh, I don't have the answer. I'm still learning as I go.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if you look at the life of Jesus, like Jesus was an action taker, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he he took action on things, and he didn't just like sit around and like wait to listen from God. Like he went and took action. But I think he did both. I think he did both
Right.
well. There's a book that I read just recently called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark
Nice.
Comer.
I just read that.
Dude, such a powerful
So good.
book. Like it's really impacted the way I show up every day. And
Hmm.
he talks about just practicing the way of Jesus. And there's really just kind of four main things that Jesus did on a regular basis. And if you practice that, and he calls it living the unhurried life, like slow
Mm-hmm.
down, allow for God, like create some margin in your life to where you can hear what God's telling you to do, right? And if then you listen to that and then you go take action. And so if you have this balance of so he there's four things. He says simplicity, the Sabbath, he what is he calls it they're all S's. Now I'm blanking. Um
Slowing, simplicity, silence and solitude,
Silence and
Sabbath, right?
solitude. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Silence, slowing down, silence and solitude, the Sabbath, and simplicity. Right. So if you think about
Mm-hmm.
that, and you can actionize those things too, right? Hey, Sabbath, turn your phones off, turn your computers away, don't do work, enjoy what God has created, take a day and like slow down your life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just be with God and his beauty and his creation. You never know what's going to happen in that, right?
Yeah.
Simplify your life. Like, why do you have to have so many different things going on at once and you're just nonstop hustle, hustle, hustle all the time? Maybe put some time in your schedule where your daily morning routine, or maybe you
Mm-hmm.
put some time in your schedule where you're just like putting everything away. There's another book I read that talks about like, hey, make it a challenge to 1 hour a day, put everything away. So like basically unplug 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, and 1 week a year. And if you do that, and that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people in today's society. But if you just did
Hmm.
that, maybe you would allow for some time to open up to where you're hearing and listening to God. And then from there, you can go and take action.
Yeah. Is that book called Tech Wise Family by chance?
Tech Wise Family. That's it.
Boom. Love it. We're
That's it.
mind melded. This is great. Yeah, that's been a great book. My wife and I discuss that like at least on a weekly basis, if not multiple times a week after we read it. We actually listened to it on an audiobook during a drive, but man, that book has been incredible because I think we live in this time where technology is all invasive. Like emails are constantly in your face, social
Yeah.
media is at your fingertip, and you just get that itch to open your app and you scroll and we default to these patterns of whatever the technology companies designed to try to make most appealing and to
Yeah.
try to like tap into our primal responses. And it's like we need to fight against that. We need to look to Jesus's way of life and say, hey, how should I be using my technology? How should I be channeling this in order to show God's glory, in order to live out my faith authentically, instead of just being, a product of my own impulses, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough, man. I mean, there's science behind it all, where like they know exactly what to do to just pull you in. And if you're on your phone and you're scrolling through all your social channels, the next thing you know, you're an hour has gone by, and you're worse off for it, because then now you're just like in this comparison mode, and you're seeing what all these highlight reels of all these other people are doing. And it's not good, man. It's not good. So I,
Mm-hmm.
I actually well, it's been probably, I don't know, I'd say probably 6 months now, but I decided to take all social media off of my phone. And
Hmm.
we need social media for if you run businesses, and there's some marketing aspect to it that's worthwhile. But if you're really intentional with it, right? Again, like I took everything off of my phone, And now, like, it's kind of painful. Like, you have to, if you took a picture from your phone and you wanted to use it for social media, you have to like either download it to a drive that you have, or like send it to
Mm-hmm.
yourself in an email. But it's just intentional, right? Like, you have set periods on your calendar to where you go and do that, and then you put it all away. And so
Yeah.
just things like that, right? Just like practical items where you can just really focus in on practicing the way of Jesus,
Hmm.
slowing down, getting, stuff like that off of your phone. And, I think John Mark Comer says, like, uh, what is it? He says, like, to basically to take everything off of your phone.
Yeah.
Like, I think he says, unsmart your phone, to where it's just
Yeah.
like, it's just a phone and a text message machine, right? Like, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
email, you don't have all your apps, you don't have anything like that on there. And it's kind of powerful.
Yeah. Um, Another book that my wife and I are currently reading is called Habits of the Household. You should put
Oh,
that on your list. If you like
yeah.
those other two, you'd love this book.
Okay.
But you literally just yesterday we were reading about how our habits, our liturgies are literally like our patterns of worship. And he was talking about specifically mornings. He said we wake up every morning like a child looking for someone who's looking for us. And
Hmm.
if we go roll over on our bed and pick up our phone, then we're looking at like my email and my social media and trying to find your value in your productivity or what other people think of you essentially. And you shut out God and his voice to speak into your life. And so he was just kind of encouraging you to, think about how you're spending your mornings. Like, what are you looking for in the morning? Where are you setting your identity? And that's also something I want to hear your thoughts on, because I know identity is a big piece of your journey, and where do we find our identity? So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. I think a lot of us, and myself included, for a period of time where I kind of just, until I woke up one day and had this aha moment. I think a lot of us, specifically men, I think a lot of us find our identity in our career. Whether that's, in the military, you're a pilot, and if you think about like how you introduce yourself, right? Typically you introduce yourself to someone with what your career is. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pilot. I'm a military officer. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a entrepreneur, businessman. Whatever that is. And because that's where we spend a lot of the majority of our time is in our work and our job and our career, focused on making money, building wealth, providing for our family. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot, we get focused there, and then we lose focus on the most important things in our life. And that's where I was, just a couple years ago, until I just had this aha moment one day where I woke up and I said to myself, what's this all for? You know,
Yeah.
Scripture in the Bible says, what's it all for if you gain the world but lose your soul,
Mm.
right? And that's where I was like, what's all this real estate and this wealth and this money and this career that I have, what's it all for if I'm not having a relationship with my God and with my bride and my kids just
Mm.
think I'm the dad with the cell phone in front of my face, right? Like my
Yeah.
my 4-year-old at the time was just daily like, hey, dad, can we play? Put the phone away, dad. Can we put the phone away, dad?
Mm.
And after a while you're like, oh man, yeah, you're right, I need to put that stuff away. My
Yeah.
identity isn't in my career. It's being a man of God. It's being an amazing husband. It's being an amazing dad. Like, if you think about it, those are the most important things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The pastor at my church said one day as we were leaving, he said, go out this week and set your eyes on eternity. Like, take action
Mm.
with your eyes set on eternity. And if you look at it that way, like, and you think about the way that you're showing up every day in your life, like, what are you doing to set your eyes on eternity, to take action towards eternity? Because that's where you're going to be for forever,
Mm.
right? It's not
Mm.
on the most recent real estate deal. It's not
Yeah.
on, the 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 flight that I'm going to go do, for the military. Like, so it was just a wake up call for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just saw an email that somebody had sent, like their weekly email, and it was like the top regrets of people who are, aging and dying. And one of them is that they didn't build something that lasted beyond themselves.
Mm,
Um, and obviously whether that's a family, a business, inheritance you pass on, those sorts of things. We know even those things may not last into eternity, but there's something that's larger than ourselves. But if we even pull our perspective back past that and we're like, what is actually going to last past my life into eternity? And we as Christians know we do have life that lasts beyond our physical death. And we know that, our relationship with God is going to last beyond that. Our relationship with other believers is going to last beyond that. And then, our own character and experiences and memories and those sorts of things that we're going to take with us, those things
Yeah.
are going to last. But a lot of the other stuff, our wealth, our career accomplishments, um, possessions, like we're going to leave all that stuff behind.
Yeah.
So, like Stephen Covey says in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, start with the end in mind. If we're going to leave all that behind, not saying we shouldn't have any of that stuff, but we shouldn't be like holding on to those things with our white knuckle grip, because we're going to part with it at some point. Could be today, could be 5 years from now, could be 50 years from now. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and a lot of
but
people talk about leaving a legacy, right? What, the legacy that I want to leave is teaching my children to know and love God, to have a relationship with God, because they're going to be next in line to live their life for eternity, right? We have a podcast, and we had a guest come on, and we were kind of talking about this similar discussion, and he said,
hmm,
there's so many people that are so focused on where their kids are going to go to college,
yeah,
but they have no idea how to set them up for where they're going to go to eternity. If you think
yeah,
about that, like how many parents in the world are so focused on, their kids' performance and their grades in school and their sports and where they're going to go to college, but they don't even talk about their faith. Like they don't teach them
mm,
about, the word of the Bible. They don't pray. They don't go to church. Like, all this stuff. And if they do, maybe it's like 1 hour a week, right? You go to church on Sundays for an hour and then that's it. Um, and so like, how are you leaving your legacy? Are you teaching your children about God and creating their values and their belief system, so
hmm.
they end up with you in eternity? It's an interesting thought.
So how have you transformed and applied that, where you were realized, hey, I'm being really distracted with my kids. I'm on my phone all the time. I'm answering emails all the time. I don't have time to play with my kids, to kind of having that epiphany of like, I need to be investing into my kids' eternal futures. What
Yeah.
does that look like? How do you do that practically?
Yeah. So I'm not perfect at it by any means. I'm
Hey,
still working
none
on
of
it.
us are.
Still,
So
yeah, still learning. But
yeah.
that I've tried to really kind of start putting some rhythms in our life.
Mm,
And there's a book called Family Discipleship, where it really helps you kind of think about your daily rhythms, your daily actions, to
yeah.
where you're putting those most important things into your life. And yeah, we still have to work, right? We still have to create a living. We still have to pay the bills. But I've scheduled my life now that I'm out of the military, and I kind of create my own schedule to where those battle rhythms, those daily rhythms, are focus around being an apprentice of Jesus, being a disciple of Jesus. And, it's in our daily conversations. I'm waking up in the morning and I'm doing my no kidding, like first thing, just like you said, like, hey, I'm not looking at email. I'm not looking at social media. My first thing is I'm opening up the Bible. Right.
Mm,
And I'm going and I'm doing a Bible study, and I'm reading and I'm praying and I'm journaling. And then I'm working on myself. I'm meditating, I'm exercising, I'm working out to prepare myself and getting ready for the day. I
yeah.
get my kids up, get them ready for school. I take them to school. We talk about what we learned in Sunday school this week. We pray together. We talk about what we're grateful for today. Every single morning in the car, I say, "Hey,
Mm,
what are we grateful for today, kids?" Right? And we go around and we talk about what we're grateful for, and we talk about like the blessings in our life. And so it's just kind of and then I go to church, and I have a very kind of shortened day of work. It's basically 9 a.m. to about 2:30 p.m. That's my work day, right? And then I shut down work, and then I go pick up my kids, and then I'm present. I put the phone away, I put the computers away, I go to their activities, their sports, their school stuff,
mm,
and then we eat as a family every single night. Like we are around the dinner table. Like there's like,
Hmm.
it's a hard and fast. Like we're going to
Yeah.
sit at the dinner table together and we're going to talk about our day. No phones, no computers. We're going to pray. We're going to ask like, how our day went, what we did. And then like, it's just being present and
Yeah, for
being
sure.
fully there. Right. Instead of
Hmm.
thinking about other stuff going on. And so again, I'm not perfect, but I'm working on it. And
Yeah.
then Sundays is now like a Sabbath. Like we go to church, we come home, we do lunch as a family. We have like, a family meeting. We talk about like, my wife and I come up with like values that we want to teach. And so we like sit around and we talk about like whatever the value is of the month, like how we put that into practice.
Mm,
And then we like go around like, hey, how do we show love this week? We talk
yeah,
about that.
that's
And
cool.
then, like we go outside and we go for a hike and we enjoy God's beauty, and maybe I'll hang out and we'll all read together. So it's just putting those kind of practices into place and just
Mm,
being apprentices of Jesus, just like
yeah,
John Mark Comer says in his book.
absolutely. And I'm curious. I know you're farther along in the family journey, but how do you teach and example technology use with your children? Because that's something that I think about going forward. I only have a 1.5-year-old, but at some point she's going to want to have a phone. She's going to
Yeah.
have a computer. Like, how do I teach her how to responsibly use those technologies, and how to? She's going to be exposed to something that she's not supposed to at some point. Like, how
Yeah.
do I manage that process?
Yeah, man, it's tough. I mean, so I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and I honestly think it's about modeling and being intentional about how they see you
Mm,
with those with those tech items. And so if for a while, kind of before I've been starting to really practice the way here, my kids saw me on my phone all the time. And so, it's interesting. Like they'll find anything to be a play phone. Like they'll find a calculator, or they'll
yep.
find, something that is in the square or rectangle formation, and that's their phone. And like as an 8-year-old and
Literally
5-year-old,
yesterday, my daughter had a little keyboard to our iPad, and she's like, "Hello,
yeah,
hello."
yeah, do
She's a
they?
1.5-year-old.
Yeah, man, and they watch. They're like
Yeah.
sponges, right? And so like
Hmm.
you have to be really cognizant of how you're showing up and how you're modeling that. So
Yeah.
the more that you can have those periods of time where you're putting the phone away, where you're putting the computer away. And in TechWise family, like he talks about, like, hey, you have a living room where there is no tech, right? Like there is no TV on the wall. There are no iPads. There are no computers. That's all away. Like, and that's in an office, and there's a place and a time for that. And then when it's family time, there's no tech involved, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to say that like tech is important, because honestly, like it's a part of our daily lives, and our kids need to know and understand and learn tech for their future. But I just think that there's just being more intentional about like having a time and place for it, and then when
Hmm.
it's not, like put it away and just model it so they can know how to be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And another plug for TechWise Family. That's a great book
It's a great book.
that mentions this topic, and it's a continual wrestling with those concepts, but the intentionality piece is what I think it really brings out.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned your morning routine, making that a priority. So, really, what does it look like for you to make spiritual growth a daily priority?
Yeah. So I used to get up in the morning and I would go right to work. I'd say it was a morning routine, but then I'd immediately start getting into emails and, social media and everything like that. So now, my routine is, so my church has these like, well, I have it right here. It's just these like Bible studies. So the pastor of my church, like this is my daily appointment with God, and this is about
Mm,
John. And so it's basically just every single day you go through like 5 verses, and then you like basically just study it, and he asks questions through it, and you fill it out, and you study it, and then you pray about what you're learning. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm basically doing a daily Bible reading and a daily Bible study and prayer in that. and then I have a journal, and I take that, and it's here on my desk. I just have a journal, and then I just write about what's on my mind, whatever comes up, whatever is happening in my life, and I just kind of combine the prayer time, the Bible reading, and then journaling, and kind of just put it all together and just see wherever it takes me. And so
Hmm.
that's how I start every single morning now. And it's just a great way to start your day. It's just getting into the Word as soon as you can get into it and get going. And it just kind of starts your day in a positive note. So that's where I go, and then afterwards, I typically will do like an exercise or workout of some kind, and kind of get my body going and being healthy. And I think that's just really really important as well. It's just to be physically fit, so it gets my
When you're
mind
doing
going.
that physical routine, do you listen to music or you just kind of have silence and kind of absorb what you read about that morning?
So I'm a big Peloton fan.
Okay.
I've kind of become addicted to it. So we have a Peloton bike, and it's typically like a guided
Hmm.
ride, or if it's nice outside. We live in Colorado, so half the time it's pretty cold. But spring, summer, fall, I'll get outside and go run.
Hmm.
And I'll either do like a guided run where there is like music and it's positive, uplifting, communication, or I'll just turn it on silent and just be kind of out with nature, and it'll still
Nice.
track kind of what I'm doing, but yeah, just kind of be out in nature. I think being out in nature is huge. Just going on just taking walks and going on walks or hikes and just being out and what God created is amazing too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'd mentioned you're currently going through John, but what Bible books do you specifically go to? Times of difficulty. What are the ones that really impacted you the most in your faith?
So I think the most so James is a huge one for me. I love reading through James because he's just straight up, like, he calls you out, right?
Yeah,
Um and he's an action taker, and I think like living out your faith through action is huge. And it's not just words, it's not just believing, and we talked about like let go and let God. It's having faith, but having faith through action. And so I go to that a lot. And that's I love going through Proverbs, um, and so yeah, those are the two I go to a lot, James and Proverbs.
it's funny. I heard something else on a podcast recently about James, and I think he had some name that he was called like camel knees or something because he was always praying. And you read through that book and you're like, man, this guy is just convicting me, um, just straight fire. But he was also a man of action, and also it's crazy to think that he at some point really did not believe in Jesus
Yeah,
as the half brother of Jesus, and then the later part of his life, he was so dedicated to following Christ.
yeah,
That to me is amazing because you think about what was in between those. What was it that caused him to change his life so drastically from being totally unbelieving in Jesus to then totally dedicated to Jesus?
yeah. Well, I mean, same as Paul, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, he was a non-believer and then found his way and like went to the ultimate of like being put in prison and
yeah.
just spreading the word through the way he did through all of his letters. And I mean, it's just amazing, man.
Hmm.
So
So what in our current day and age, as culture changes, things become maybe more hostile towards Christianity. Is that something you think military members need to be prepared to just stand for their faith and be able to be ready to take persecution?
yeah, man, it's so hard. But we were just talking about like Paul, right? Like, he stood up for his faith, right? And
Hmm.
he was put in prison um, for it, and he stood there for it and by it. And there is going to come a time, right, where we have to do that. And it's I'm not one of like thinking we're at end of times just yet. But it's I don't know. There's more and more persecution towards Christianity today than there ever has been,
Wow.
and it's becoming less and less popular over time. And so, yeah, if you are a true believer, you have to speak out. You have to, be a disciple. And so, you know, there are so many ways to do that. It's through something like this, like a podcast, or through a business. I think there are so many amazing businesses that are disciples, right? And you can do that. There's so many ways that you can do that in the military, that you can have the conversations and be open about it, and not that like it's just like this Bible beaten guy who like this is the way and only way, but like have conversations, be open, and have candid, um, you know, critical thinking, and have these conversations to where you're not just hiding in your faith, that you're open about it, and you're talking to people and you're inviting people. And maybe it is like inviting someone to church with you. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
is, and you're acting out the way you believe through your actions, through your values, and they see that. They see how you show up on a regular basis, and they're like, there's something different about this person. What's going on with this person? And the way you show up and the way you treat people and the way you show love, I think that just in itself could be, a huge piece to just standing in your faith.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'd mentioned Storehouse Ventures, the Mastermind, all that kind of stuff. So can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about how you're applying your faith through those specific ventures and where you think God's kind of taking that?
Yeah, man. So, through our journey, we had kind of really focused in on the real estate stuff, kind of building that wealth and the money, and the kind of trading the military income as we are getting closer to retirement. And kind of already what I spoke about was, we had this aha moment where we needed to just really get back and focused on what was most important in our lives. We saw a lot of other men struggling with this same thing, and so when we had this aha moment, we're like, hey, we got to get focused. There's these critical areas of our life that we need to get back to. And so what we did was we invited 10 close friends to come together and create community and build a stronger relationship around those core elements. And so we started having like weekly conversations, like specific on the calendar, weekly Zoom calls where we were diving in to these topics that were most important in our lives, our faith, our family, our friends, having fun again, our health, finances was important, and our mission, our purpose, our giving. So all these things we started diving into, and it's been an amazing journey, not only for myself but for the men that we started with, to where like we have really found that this is a passion, is to help men understand and realize that there's more to life than just our jobs, our careers, that identity, and focusing on those items in our life that are most important to become the best husbands that we could possibly be, the best dads that we could possibly be, the best leaders and the best friends, all around this idea that we're all men of God. And so that's where we've really found passion, and we want to pour into that because we are finding that these men need it. They need a place where they can be vulnerable, they can be real, and they can open up with other men on the same journey. And it's been powerful to see some transformation in some of these guys. They're taking action. We call ourselves kinetic men. We have so much potential, but none of us actually take that potential and put it into the action. So we are kinetic. We take action, and we help ourselves and surround ourselves around other men that are doing it together. So that's where I see us going. We're kind of trying to build this out more. We are creating these small groups, and that's what the Storehouse Mastermind is. And then we go and do these retreats. We do 3-day retreats where we get out in nature. We're up here in Colorado in the mountains. We put the phones away. We go do hard things. We go do fun things. We dive into this discussions. We get real. We get vulnerable. We break bread and we just sit around a table, and it's been amazing, man. So that's kind of where we're headed. We still have kind of the real estate stuff going on in the background, but it's very much more passive, to where we
Hmm.
can, get into the most important stuff.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's just such an incredibly powerful mission, powerful purpose, and I'll just be thinking, praying for you guys that will just continue to be blessing for those
I
guys,
appreciate it.
especially. So, what advice would you give to other believers in the military who might be struggling right now, feeling isolated, lonely, struggling in their faith?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say stay strong. Stand strong, and find a community of people that you can surround yourself with. This community of Thunder and Legion, like, there are a group of men and women that are believers, and if you surround yourself with other believers and encourage each other and lift each other up and pray for each other and with each other and help each other, that's where, like, building relationships and being in a community is where you can really thrive. So don't feel isolated, don't feel alone. There are people out there that can help each other. So and that's a really big important piece to what we've been trying to build, is just community, like being in community with other people. Like, God created us to be in community. So find the community that works for you and pour into that.
Absolutely. We definitely are not meant to be alone. That's the first thing in the Bible that God says is not good, is when man is alone. So we need to find that community. Yeah. We're the most vulnerable when we're alone. So, well, Stu, would you mind closing us out with prayer? Just encouraging those who might be listening to the podcast.
Yeah, man, for sure. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that we've had. Thank you for pouring into our lives and giving us the words to spread your word. Please help us as we continue to stand for you. We listen to you. Help us create margin in our lives to where we can be apprentices for you, disciples for you, and spread your word through our missions. Help us understand that our identity isn't in our careers, our jobs, but our identity is in you. You are in us. Please help us, create our daily actions that will follow you. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So how can listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, man. So you can go to our website. It's storehouse310.com. You can find out just everything we're doing. We have a podcast. It's called Filling the Storehouse. We talk a lot about, the concepts that we discussed today. You can see what our mastermind is all about, Storehouse Mastermind. And there's an events page. You can check out when our next Kinetic Men retreat is. And then lastly, if you don't mind, I'd like to give a resource. One of the exercises that we did in our mastermind group, we talked about, like, just the roles we play in our life and identify those roles. And if you think about it, as a father, there's so many roles as a father. And so we created this exercise where you go through it, you identify roles you play, you define those roles, and then really, like, define what success looks like in those roles. And it's just an exercise where you write those out, you define it, and then you actionize those things, and you put stuff on the calendar to where you can better yourself in that role. So you can go to storehouse310.com/roles, and you can sign up and get that free PDF. And we did a webinar on it, so you can listen to the webinar of how we go through that exercise and do it. It's powerful. Just take this idea of being a father, a husband, a friend, and the roles you play in that, and then define those, and just actually really look at what success looks like in that, and then take action on it.
Thanks for sharing that. We'll link that in the show notes as well, so that way people can just click and get access to it directly. So,
yeah.
Hey, well, Stu, I really appreciate your time. A lot of great resources. I think a lot of it kind of centering around how we start our day, the habits that we bring into our families, into our careers, how we prioritize, how we balance the faith and action piece, how we listen to God, and Ruthless, Elimination of Hurry, Tech-Wise Family, a lot of those resources about how the rubber really hits the road when we apply our faith. I think there's some really good encouragement in there. So I think we got to all keep our eyes on eternity, investing in our children, investing in what's important, what's going to last, and not letting our identity default to our careers or what we're doing or accomplishments. I know that's such a struggle for me personally, and I think every military member kind of focuses on that. So I love what you guys are doing with Storehouse, with the Mastermind, Kinetic Men, and just encourage you guys to keep fighting the fight. And it's cool just to see other men living it out and really just striving to grow more to be men of Christ. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate it. This was a fun conversation.
Thanks for listening to Thundering Legion. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Please share this episode with another Armed Forces member who needs encouragement in their faith. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.